And we are live.
Hello. Bearing in mind,
Hello,
I can't
guys.
see the chat again, so you're gonna have to, you know.
Yeah, that's all right. I'll relay. Let me mute myself so I'm not hearing myself by myself. That's
Hear myself, by
excessive.
myself, for myself.
Yes.
Sounds like a pop song.
By the Cris, for the Cris.
For the Cris, for the Cris, singing the song. Talking about shadow work all night long. Anyway.
Ooh, that was a good one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, guys. So, thanks for joining us, and thanks for waiting a little bit. We are here now.
Waiting for
Sorry
us.
about that. Yeah, for joining us and wait for us. Exactly. Ahead of time, apologies for some of the lighting. It is very dreary on both of our ends. So it's just gonna kind of be slightly a goth day.
Slightly a goth day.
Yeah, just slightly.
Slightly. Just on the edge of it. Teetering over into dismal.
Virgo Ravenchild says the bright side of the dark side.
Yes.
Good morning. Let's see, who do we got? We got Wayward Wildflower. Hello. Virgo Ravenchild. Hello. Johnny Dragon. Hi. Oh my God. Okay. Amaryllis. Hi. Nice to see you. Pantarea. Mystical Seeker. Cosmic Whisper. Sweet Susie. Jilzy Poe. Freaky Unicorn. Wow, we got a lot of people today. Hello, hello. I see Tanya in the chat as well. I feel like I haven't seen so many of these people in so long, Joey.
It's because we missed it last week. And we're like, what did we do?
Yes. The dark side has cookies. That's true. I would be there. I mean, you wouldn't even need the cookies, truthfully.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, we need the freaking cookies.
Yeah, we don't really need an excuse.
By the way, Star Wars trailer for anyone who's seen it. Dark side.
Happy clapping. That's what we'll start this heavier topic off with today. Star Wars, go see it.
The dark side.
Oh my goodness. Okay, guys. So, because of live chat withdrawal, exactly. So because of, I'm gonna try not to lean on my desk because my microphone is on it right now. But no promises because I use my hands a lot. Anyway, so no, I just haven't pulled my daily yet.
Oh,
I can pull one. I can.
Yeah, I'm gonna pull one.
We'll pull a card to get this started off with. But while we're doing that, our last chat, the topic of shadow work and soul retrieval was brought up, and we thought, oh wow, that's gonna be a long answer. So we'll make that a whole different live. And so this is that live. Hello.
Hi.
Welcome to this live. Oh, I missed your face too, Lily. She said she misses our faces.
Well, you've got at least there's three whole lives this week.
Oh yeah, we're all set up, guys. We could already say that now too.
Yeah,
the next one.
Right?
Well, for the campfire one, I haven't officially set it. It's on my channel set up, but people don't know. And then we haven't said about the next one that we're doing together, what that topic will be.
Okay.
So, oh, my shirt is giving Mystical Seeker life. Yeah.
It's good. It's good.
This is currently my favorite shirt. I also like to wear it with there's a black and gray striped, what I like to call my Freddy Krueger cardie, or my monochromatic Kurt Cobain, if you will. So yeah, and I like to wear that together as a little homage. Anyway. Yes. Oh, hi, Wolf Raven. I didn't see that name before. So many names. Okay, card pulling, right. Get it together, Cris. All right, I'm going to do my own first. And then one for the group. Ooh.
What did you get for the group?
Ceremony invitation. Which it's not going to focus on me. So let me
Just make loads of noise. Like, card.
Well, it's not wanting to like focus. You know what I'm saying? Like literally. Literally focus. Boom.
Interesting. That's a very interesting card, especially when you're going to see mine in a minute.
Oh, I bet. There we go.
Yeah. So you would say there's an element of creating to your card, right?
There's definitely, I mean, I don't know if you guys can tell because there is a lot of detail in it, but you can see this energetic field coming down through her head. I am blurred out again. Mm-hmm. You can see this energetic field coming down through her head, and she's channeling it into like a crystal grid. So there's like a transmutation thing. Mm-hmm. There's a movement of energy, a transference.
Mm-hmm. So
yes. Also there's a little snaky at the bottom, Joey. You'll appreciate that.
Snack.
It's a snack.
It's a snack. It's the snack. So this is the one that I pulled.
Wait, let me click on you so it shows. Boom. Ooh.
So beginning from the Oracle of Oddities with new life within a woman and all the flowers. They might be dog roses. They look a bit like dog roses.
When it's black and white, it's hard to tell.
Yeah, but the flowers are pink.
Yeah. Oh, that's lovely. Is that the heart that's at the top, the anatomical heart?
Yeah. That you can see the heart and the. No, that's good. They look like kidneys. So all the anatomy is in the wrong place by the looks of it. But there's an interesting energy of birth and beginnings and drawing down energies like there was in your card. So.
Oh, hi, Random. She's like, sorry I was late. And it's like, girl,
we haven't even started.
We were late for ourselves, okay?
You were going to tell people what the 3 lives were going to be as well, which we haven't.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we got to do that. Hold on, I got a question though. Are you a horror fan? Yes, huge horror fan. I am. My mother is a diehard horror fan. Horror, sci-fi, suspense, thrillers, all that. I grew up on it, so it's a thing. The more satirical and gory, the better for me. Like, I love the really crappy B-movie style stuff.
Well, the B-movie is my favorite, but then that's a little bit more tongue-in-cheek than...
Yeah, exactly. That's yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, anyway, the lives, guys, that we're going to be doing. Joey, do you want to introduce any of them? I feel like I've been talking a lot. I mean, I know you're lip glossing right now.
I'm trying to decide whether I feel this lip gloss or not.
Yep, I just fixed it random. I had you selected from the card and didn't select back. But it's good now. So we just got to see your display of lip glossery. And that is how you put it on your lips.
I'm not sure whether I feel this lip gloss or not. Anyway.
It's hard to tell from the lighting too, though.
The lighting's weird in Scotland right now. Anyway, so the next live on my side of the channel, obviously this one is Soul Retrieval, is going to be about Angraboda.
Yes.
Angraboda.
That sounds like it should be like a sea shanty.
Yeah.
You need to make an Angraboda sea shanty.
And if you guys don't know, Angraboda is the giantess mother of Hel.
My mommy.
Jormungandr, which I could say all day. Jormungandr. She also has other children, which we will discuss in the actual video itself. But it's basically a live chat talking about some dark goddess energies, about her as a archetype. She doesn't usually get much love, much attention, much of anything.
Right?
And her energy is kind of like incredible, and she's really, really gorgeous. And that will coincide with the 13th, which is, in my opinion, a Dark Goddess Day. And it will actually kick off a whole new series for me. So Cris is actually helping me kick off the Monsters in Mythology new series that will be coming to my channel. And we will be starting with Angraboda.
Yes. And then on Friday night, Friday the 13th, we'll be doing Goddess Stories Around the Campfire with the lovely Miss Molly Roberts from Her Speak. And that whole day is going to be about the independent / dark / wild / any other things that are socially unacceptable.
Running naked through the streets.
Like goddesses and heroines. That, yeah, just like giving them a spotlight to shine in, and like sort of a reclaiming energy there.
Yeah,
because Friday the 13th is traditionally like unlucky, at least in the Western society. So, yeah, I was like, no, we have to do. It's October, Friday the 13th. Hello. So,
and if you're interested in that sort of thing, I have released a snack blog post, which is actually for the most part talking about Medusa, and that kind of touches on those kind of themes. So if you're interested in that and you can't wait until Friday, there's a blog post.
Yes.
Just, self-service. Anyway.
Also, while I'm at it. Yeah. Also, while I'm at it, before we do that, for those of you who are looking into Hell and looking forward to the See You in Hell series, the first video will be up on Saturday.
Woo!
It is scheduled for Saturday morning. So.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
We work hard for you people. We work hard.
We work hard. Okay. Anyway, soul retrieval. Let's get deep.
Quick. Yeah.
So someone asked, Sweet Susie says, can you give a brief explanation of what soul retrieval is?
Cris can go first this time.
Oh, okay.
I always go first with defining everything.
You're right. Well, that's because you're a Virgo and you're good at doing that. Like streamline answer.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna.
So I kick it to her first. No. Okay. So soul retrieval. I guess first let's talk about shadow work for a second before I do that. So shadow work is basically the practice of claiming the things that you would normally suppress, so to speak. Okay.
Or reject.
Yeah, or reject of that. See, she's doing it anyway. Do you guys see this shit?
I'm teaching Cris to be streamlined. It's just,
it's not a thing that I do, okay?
Baby bird
I'm a detail person. And I want all of the details. Okay, so in that light, what a lot of people see soul retrieval as is like calling back the pieces of self. So some people could be like, oh, they're the same. Personally, I think they're different. I think that they definitely have like an umbrella there. But I feel like soul retrieval, as it's usually defined, is calling back those pieces of yourself. And it's usually something that has been lost from a major trauma, something that like you would disassociate with, which is like, for those of you who don't know, that term is kind of like not being yourself. Oftentimes in like rape victims and stuff, during the moment, they will place themselves outside of the actual action. So that is a disassociation.
I can talk about that later. Yeah.
Yeah. It can be things from past life stuff also that is like really, really scarring to where that has happened. There's just it, and it's something that tends to be much more entangled, perhaps, in like the fundamental kind of foundation of your brain. Does that make sense, Joey? Am I making that a word? That's a thing.
I'm with you. But then I live inside your head. We have to check chats with you.
That's right. That's right. Girl, you don't even know.
So for me,
yes,
what soul retrieval is usually about is that when people talk about it, and I'm in two minds about this because I think people might go a little bit too far with the idea of it, but there is a fragmentation of self. So for me, the difference between shadow work and soul retrieval is that shadow work is dealing with things within ourselves, and there is already a bit more of a break with soul retrieval. Like, I don't personally believe that we can full on lose parts of ourselves because of the interconnected nature of everything and spirit. So I don't think it's gone in the way a lot of people present it, like, oh, it's completely fragmented off and got. I don't believe that we can ever truly lose completely parts of ourselves. And this was something I was looking at and struggling with a bit when I was kind of looking at people's work, is the idea that, you know, oh, it's gone from the self and you have to go find. I was like, it can't be gone. We can't lose part of ourselves completely like that. I mean, because of the interconnected nature of all things.
You're literally talking about the first thing that turned me off of it when I first read it. When I first read it. Yeah, no, that was the first thing I thought, is like, but nothing is ever really gone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But that's not to say that I don't find it useful. I think it's still, you know, I just think like people are like, it's like with shadow work where people say, oh, it's dark. It's like this
negative, yeah,
it's like this assumption that goes to another extreme, and I don't think that gone is really the right word.
No, in my opinion, I think for me it's more like we've put walls up between parts of ourselves, like we have created, whether on purpose, consciously, subconsciously. And there's no blame attributed right to this statement, but we've created kind of like a blockage or a border or a wall between parts of ourselves, and that's how it is then perceived as being lost. And that can be because of trauma. It can be, like Cris already said, you know, like past life thing. And then, of course, there's that divide between lives that we make tangible in our own minds more so than, you know, in the spirit realm. And yeah, so that to me is what soul retrieval is about. It's about like kind of bringing down the self-imposed walls between parts of ourselves that we've kind of blocked really off a little bit.
That you're saying walls, because on the way home I was listening to a song that was literally singing about why do we build the walls.
There you go, synchronicity. I live in Chris's head. I live in Chris's head. She can't get rid of me.
It's okay. She's got like a guest room there, guys. It's fine. It's not a big deal.
It's dark. It's gothic with a little bit of pink. It's good.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. Just the cushions.
All right. So we've got some questions going on. First of all, this isn't a question, but I wanted to acknowledge this one. Wayward Wildflower says, I've seen soul retrieval mostly associated with shamanistic practices. So here's the thing. So yeah, soul retrieval is generally focused on like a shamanic practice. Like when you look up that stuff, you're going to find like shamanic practitioners, or in my opinion, neo-shamanic practitioners. Because you don't want to get me on that soapbox. Anyway, no, so there's I even like threw myself off right now because I
felt that soapbox coming.
I already went. No, so you will find a lot of neo-shamanic practitioners talking about that. You will also find, though, that they also talk about shadow work, because a lot of people who are interested in that end up getting into psychology, because that is dealing with the other side, the different realms, and the cerebral effect in terms of the brain. And think about it. If our brain is literally a bunch of firing energy, then why wouldn't someone who does shamanic practices want to learn about that? So they tend to merge sometimes. And in my opinion, some of the ones that are really, really knowledgeable are the ones that heavily merge them. Okay. So kind of both, but not necessarily shadow work always is the other. It's
so kind of both, but neither. Oh, good.
Yeah, well, I mean, hi, welcome to the flux. But the thing is like, it depends on the practitioner, obviously, because shadow work is definitely like a Jungian thing, and it has been adopted in a lot of different places. So
it's kind of
you know,
evolved by itself as well, because it started
yeah,
off from like psychological perspective, and then it's kind of evolved through a spiritual one.
yeah. I don't know. Is there anything you wanted to add to that, Joey?
In terms of shamanic practices,
Hmm?
it's a weird thing, because you can argue that a lot of practices have shamanic elements, and I think that the way that we define what a shaman is in modern times is an interesting subject all by itself. If we're talking about an sort of an animist perspective, if that's what we mean when we're looking at, you know, shamanistic practice, then a lot of spiritual path working within the pagan umbrella has that within itself, and you know, right down to, you know, European witches and their plant davas and things like that. So yes, I mean, I think it's probably key to soul retrieval because of the way that shamanistic practices see things outside of human beings and outside of their own selves having an energy, having a soul, having a life force, and recognizing that. And that helps with the idea then of, I don't know if you want to call it like the way that in modern times people think about tracking soul retrieval, because you can then, it's that kind of energetic pulling. This is something that, again, that irks me slightly, because it's like we can't lose part of ourselves, we just pull the thread. But like some people take an outside view of it, and they're like, oh, and then you go tracking and you give it a name and you give it an animal face or whatever, and you go find it, and like perceiving soul outside of the self is a shamanistic thing. So
yeah.
I can see that.
So we've got like comments that are active, you guys. I'm liking like all the commentary and the questions. Pantaria says, do you feel more that it's the physical incarnation that partakes in the taking back and less the soul that is touched? I'm not sure if that makes sense.
So the way that we are in this physical incarnation versus the entirety of the soul?
I think so. Do you feel more that it's the physical incarnation that partakes in the taking back and less the soul? So do you feel like this is the one that like is the catalyst to taking it back, I guess, or that works more with it?
Well, if
Rather
we
than
believe
like
in past lives being able to affect us right now, and then maybe parts of soul retrieval that come into being with past life fractures and boundaries and things that have damaged, inverted commas, the soul from previous lives, then I don't think there's any separation. I don't think it's just this incarnation. The thing is, the more in depth I get with the Flux way of thinking about soul and the interconnectedness of lives and time and things like that, I don't see things as being linear anymore. I see things more about like it's just all threads on the same web, and we could be existing in multiple places at the same time. It's that's kind of like
the
I've
Flash
talked about this
universe.
before. Yeah, but we could be, basically the soul could be, for all we know, could be so expansive, so massive that we're actually living out lives simultaneously in different echoes of reality. It all gets a bit mind bubbly, and I go a bit
Yeah.
cross-eyed after a while.
Well, I mean, you know, welcome to things that have to do with psychology and neo-shamanism.
Yeah, and if that's a possibility, even if that's a plausible, possible reality, that we're living out different lives simultaneously, because the soul is so expansive and we're all connected through this web of energetic ecosystem. I'm trying to keep this as simplified as I can to not like drive people crazy.
Yeah.
Then it's
this topic can get out of hand really fast.
Yeah. It's fully possible then, if we're living simultaneous parallel lives, to have a trauma in one life that could affect the soul in some way, and then the effect would reverberate through all of the soul. So I don't honestly feel that this incarnation is where we're trapped to on any level. I think that's a human perception of time, and experience. I think we limit the way we think about ourselves to being like box thinking, because it's easier to just focus on the life that we know that we're living.
That kind of goes back to the disassociation thing too.
Mm-hmm.
Because of the whole, like, it's outside of me, so this is the box again.
Yeah.
And we have to do that to make ourselves safe sometimes, or feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, it's not always like bad, but you also should come back.
Yeah.
Oh geez, there's so many questions. Oh my gosh. Okay. All right. So I've got like there's a notepad now. All right. So this was a conversation between two people that I found, and I wanted to take it down because I feel like that's also something to talk about. So Mary Morning says, I tried to talk to my husband about shadow work and he gets defensive about it. Not everyone is ready for soul retrieval. They have to want it. And then Hellbound Heathen said, I think resistance is the first defense of any shadow exploration.
Mm-hmm.
Which I wanted to just note that and say, yeah, I agree. Like, a lot of times that's how you find what your shadow is, because it's the thing that you're like up in arms about very suddenly.
Or you don't want to look at.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's see. But there was something in that I wanted to address. It gets defensive. Not everyone is ready for soul retrieval. Not everyone's ready for soul retrieval, and not everyone's necessarily ready for shadow work either. Like formally, like, I'm doing this, and that's fine. Again, like, I know this time of year, it's like really popular to do it, but if you're not feeling it, in the sense that, like, you're just not feeling pulled to it, not you're avoiding it, but you're just not feeling pulled to it, or you feel like you're not ready, you know what I'm saying? Like, not that you're not bullshitting yourself.
It could actually be detrimental. You could actually end up fracturing your soul when you think about it. If you force yourself into a shadow work when you're not emotionally and mentally equipped to begin it, you could cause yourself more damage than good.
And Joey and I have said in the past too, like, regardless of if it's a shadow work or soul retrieval, any of that, if you are in a really chaotic or vulnerable state, I guess you could say, and you know that this could be potentially very, very dangerous for you in a very, like, real, quote unquote, like, physical level, if you will, then you should definitely be, either waiting on this or talking to someone who's a professional while doing it, or at least talking to them about you doing it. Because it's not something that, if you know that you're fragile in that sense, and I'm not going to say fragile like
a negative thing.
A negative thing, but like just knowing yourself and knowing your own limitations and loving yourself in a healthy, proper way, which is knowing when you need help.
Yeah, I was going to say there's a difference between self-love and self-care, and then the denial that comes with not wanting to start something. And most of us know where that line is.
Yeah. Let's see. And I will say that with soul retrieval, you tend to do that more with other people, not with yourself, because it is such a deeply ingrained, usually from big traumas. It can have a lot of damage that gets dug up. And so generally you'll see people recommend doing it with someone.
Yep. I mean, I can talk about the trauma side of it now, if that's...
Yeah, I mean, we're here in this part, so...
So Cris mentioned earlier about how, rape victims go into the being somewhere else trauma response, which can cause a fracture within the self. And as somebody who has survived sexual abuse, this is something that I have had as a coping mechanism. And if you're not careful, following the healing process that follows the trauma, it's really easy to slip into that state of being if once you've done it. And it is like kind of like a slipping outside of your body, a slipping outside of your soul, and just to the emptiness, so you don't feel anything. And for people who've been through different kinds of abuse, because I imagine people do it for physical abuse as well, so they don't feel the physical full brunt of the physical abuse when they're being attacked and things. And it can be one of those weird experiences where it's almost like being out of body, out of soul almost, and all your emotions switch off. And that's what it feels like. It feels like it goes click, 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 and you don't feel anything. And you have to be really, really careful following it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is something.
That's like you. Wait a minute. So your windshield wipers. I got an analogy. Big surprise. So your windshield wipers, right? The motor on them. There's this little. It's usually like a plastic latch, like a safety thing. And I live in the north where there's a lot of snow now. And so if you ever try to use your wipers and they're frozen and you haven't properly defrosted it, you can snap that little mechanism that goes between the actual wiper function and the motor. And the reason that's there is because if it didn't, you would burn up your motor and then you'd really have a problem to replace. Your brain is that little like plastic thing that snaps when it disassociates, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Let's not burn up the motor of our brain. Snap out, and then we'll fix that later.
You are the windscreen and the wiper. Anyway.
Yes. Be the plastic part.
Be the plastic part.
Also, thanks for watching us, Hellbound. He says, thanks for the hangout, ladies. I really enjoy these when I can make them, but I like to watch afterwards. Yep.
And anyway, so once we have snapped our little plastic bit, if we're not careful, and that basically means that we then cut ourselves off from part of our soul, because obviously emoting and connecting and interacting with emotional responses is a natural human part of life, is experiencing the plethora, and I mean the plethora of emotions, because whenever we touch on things like shadow work and stuff, there's this idea out there that certain emotions are not spiritual, they're low vibration or whatever. I'm like, no. The human beings are meant to experience all the plethora of emotions. So to disconnect from feeling things is possibly one of the ways, to my mind, where you can cause like a blockage in the self that can then lead to the need for soul retrieval, because you've kind of blocked yourself from feeling because the situation was too traumatic, too painful, and then you kind of like brought the castle doors down.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to find a way of
fill them out.
Yep. The emotion moat out there can, you know.
The emotion moat?
The emotion moat out there.
Now.
Yeah, there you go. That's the hashtag for this video. Hashtag emotion moat.
Yes. I get excited over small things.
So, yeah.
No, that's, pretty much. I like the emotion mode thing now. That's a good visual.
That's the thing now.
I'm pleased with that.
Hashtag emotion mode.
So, let's see here. Newmeat asks, this is an interesting topic. My niece suffered an accident that caused brain damage. She recovered, but was not really the same person. Could there be some soul loss, but she is not able to retrieve it due to the physical damage caused?
Well, there's no way that we can answer that question.
Yeah.
Because
I mean, you could certainly make theories around it.
Yeah, we can.
But we would still be theorizing.
So I can tell you some interesting studies that I had read about when I was doing psychology, because I did psychology up to A level and a little bit in uni.
Let us all gasp in surprise.
And they had some interesting studies where people had different types of brain damage, and there was a guy who had like a spike, and it was, I don't know where it was from and how he managed it, but it was like a railroad spike that had gone through his head, and how he survived it is anybody's guess. It must have been one of those 1 in a million survival things. And he woke up speaking a different language because of the way that...
Oh, yeah.
And they didn't know whether or not it was because different parts of his brain had been damaged in certain ways or what, but he had not been able to speak the language before. And then when he woke up from the coma and everything that was, you know, to try and help heal his brain and whatever, he was speaking a completely different language.
It's happened with people with musical instruments and stuff too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I think it was a guy that just woke up and suddenly he could play piano. Like, he'd never touched one in his life.
Yeah.
The brain is interesting.
So this is how I perceive it, and this is just a perception. I'm not going to say that I am a scientist or a psychologist or anything like that. This is just how I perceive it. So I perceive the brain to be very much like a microcosm of the spiritual ecosystem that I've talked about. So the spiritual ecosystem that I've talked about is all these interlinking threads of energy that kind of pulse like neurons firing in the brain. And the web that I perceive the spiritual ecosystem in which we're all connected to all things and deity and all possible lives and reincarnations is kind of then like a microcosm within the brain. And the interconnectedness of those two to me is kind of like there is no separation. So when we damage parts of our brain, maybe that then kind of causes a reverberation down the ecosystem, down that energetic system, and then sort of brings forward and trudges up things like in that circumstance that are from other lives or other parts that we didn't do in this incarnation. So people who are speaking different languages, people who are playing different instruments and things, perhaps that's a different life for them, but then because of the damage to that, then it's a void, it's a gap, and then nature abhors a vacuum, and it draws in from energy from that interconnectedness of self that we can't necessarily perceive. So we're drawing in energy as well as the physical body is trying to heal itself, and then the spiritual body is trying to heal itself, and it brings in information from outside of the self that we can't perceive. And that's how people wake up able to do things they weren't able to do, or their personality has shifted slightly. I can't say as whether, you know, I can't prove it. This is just me theorizing from how I perceive the world and from what I understand about the brain. And I'm not a brain scientist or anything like that, you know, I'm not an expert by any means, but
I mean, I know from working with people who are autistic. I said artistic slightly, I think that sounded like. Anyway, people who are autistic, I had to take courses about trauma and everything because many of them have that. And because they are, they often have a hard time communicating. We have to be like extra understanding about it and be very aware. And that was something that they talked about is like the pathways of things, that your brain will build up these like lines. It's almost like building a story in your brain. And so if you see one thing, it relates to not only like this thing, but this day that it happened and everything that you were feeling and anyone else that was there. And then if you get another thing that happens, like another trauma, and then that has anything to do with the first one, like maybe it was the same street lamp or something, that will also add on to the story. And now there's even more trauma based around it and fear. And we've created more variations and lines off from this story. And so like, even with that, not even talking about past lives and stuff, even in this one right now, we totally create neuro pathways in our brains around these things.
Yeah.
So, yes. Let's see. So random is the next one. That sounds like PTSD. Yeah. So PTSD would be in that. That's also something that we talked about. Yeah. Let's see. So random says, question. I like how she always says question. Like, but let's get real. Because could soul retrieval really be soul realignment? Like the shards of soul are just out of alignment. Then when you do soul retrieval, you really just realign your soul back into its form.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can make an argument for that. Yeah. Because I honestly, when I was looking at it and looking at soul retrieval and things, I was like, I just don't feel like you can lose. Oops, it's gone. Because on the one hand, I find that really kind of one of these detrimental things to people who've been through abuse. It kind of borders on like the kind of blaming victims for things. You know how you get like people who tell survivors they shouldn't act a certain way, they shouldn't feel a certain way, etc. That kind of borders on that, like, oh, well, you've lost a part of your soul because you couldn't handle trauma or something. And I don't I feel the judgy when I'm looking at these subjects sometimes, and I'm like, that doesn't seem right to me. Like, people come up with coping mechanisms because they need to, and it helps them survive, and then they have to heal past those mechanisms. They have to kind of learn to take the walls down a little bit, and so I don't feel like you can have lost something, like a part of your soul, to, you know, like, because of all this trauma that you've been through. I feel like there are parts of ourselves that we might lock away, we might disassociate a little bit, we might put those walls up, and then so we have to like realign ourselves with ourselves when we're ready to. So I can fully get behind the kind of alignment perspective.
Yeah, no, and I like Random's analogy for that. She's like, because, you know, when you lose your glasses but they're really just on top of your head.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I can totally see that. I mean, I think that's one of the things that I see them talk about as like a side effect, if you will, of needing the soul retrieval done and stuff, is the feeling of being really disconnected. And so for me, often, even not speaking on soul retrieval, but people who come to me for mentorship and stuff and feeling disconnected, often it's stuff that is right there. It's just they're like looking in the other direction.
Yeah.
So I can absolutely see that for something that is bigger like that. It's just maybe harder to find because we're so stuck in the fact that it has to be on the left, but it's definitely on the right. You know? Yeah, so I agree. And the thing is, too, is like, words are slippery. Y'all have heard me say that.
I think it's this thing about making out that people are broken just because they're hurting, for me.
Yeah.
And
that's a whole, yeah.
Yeah. Like, you're not irretrievably broken. Nobody is. I mean, well, okay, maybe your psychopathics are irretrievably broken in this incarnation because, but that's extreme example.
Irretrievably if it's in this carnation only.
Yeah, but just, you know, I put the caveat.
No, I get what you're saying. I'm just devil's advocating. Carry on.
I know. Whenever I say nobody is, somebody will inevitably say, "What about the psychopath?"
Oh yeah, what about this? Yeah, I know.
Yeah. But I don't feel like for most people that we are irretrievably broken or damaged or anything like that. I think there is just pain and trauma and working through those events, working through things that have hurt us, healing and becoming whole on a level that we become whole within being friends with ourselves and forgiving ourselves. And that kind of wholeness I can get behind. But the idea that we are not whole and the parts of us are missing and parts of us are broken doesn't sit well with me at all.
Look, guys, this exact topic, I'm sitting over here like, I have so much. Because this is a hell lesson. That topic right there. Broken and wasted are two words that you don't use with her. I mean, you can go ahead, but it's not suggested. It's not advised. And that's something I'll discuss in the series in more depth. But basically, like, what Joey said. I don't think there's this idea of like broken being, well, that's it, throw it in the trash.
Disposure culture.
Yeah.
I could rant about that for a whole video as well.
We could rant about many, many things, Joy. That's why we have so many lives.
That's why we do this on a weekly basis.
All right. So next question. This is from Amaryllis. Do you guys think there's a difference between working on the surface of soul retrieval, like reading about it, than the actual shadow work and continuing to find out about yourself?
Oh, sure.
Well, yeah. From
layers.
So you're saying the surface of soul retrieval versus like deep shadow work, because soul retrieval tends to be
going down the rabbit hole?
Yeah. I think that's what, because I was like, wait, what? Because they're two different things.
Okay.
Yeah.
So are we talking about like a superficial, shallow way of looking at soul retrieval versus really doing the work? Is that what we're asking?
Do you think there's a difference between working on the surface of soul retrieval, like reading about it, and then the actual shadow work and continuing to find out about yourself?
So I'm always super hesitant with the idea that some people are not really doing what they're saying they're doing, because undoubtedly some people are, involved in the shallow side of talking about anything and not really doing it. But ultimately with things like shadow work, we can't ever really judge somebody else's journey, somebody else's pain, somebody else's responses to things, because ultimately we only know ourselves. Even when we really know other people really well, we still only truly know ourselves, and we're only in charge of, and we only have control or power over truly, and should only really seek power over truly ourselves. Because it's talking about that self-mastery. It's and I've talked about this on multiple occasions, like the need to control outside of oneself versus the need for self-mastery. And for me, what spirituality should be about is self-mastery, because that's all we can truly control. We can't control outside variables as much as we wish we could. We can affect the universe outside of us through magic and physical acts and all that interconnected web of energy that we've talked about. But ultimately,
shakes at it.
Yeah, but ultimately, we can only really take charge of ourselves. And for some, the shallow or superficial level of shadow work might be the first step of putting the toe in the water. And the problem with then calling it like a shallow thing or not really doing it thing is there may be people who are like doing that as a precursor to actually doing the work. And if they then get confronted with people who are like, well, you don't truly mean it or whatever, they might then reject doing the work because they feel that they're not far enough. They're too much of a beginner. They might feel judged. They might feel like put off by the attitudes of other people. And if it happens, because I've had it happen to me where I've been interested in areas of spirituality and I've come into contact in the very beginning with people who are negative towards people who don't know the subject in depth. And I'm like, right, well, fuck it. If that's what the subject is about, then I'm not going down that path.
Right. Yeah.
So basically they can lead into one another is what I'm trying to say. It's like the reading and the finding out and the beginning to understand what it is can then lead down the garden path, if you like, down the spiral.
Yeah. So I mean, do I think there's a difference?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I think there's a difference.
There is, yeah.
I think that you can definitely, like you said, you can like read about things and stuff, and you might not use it immediately. Melanie put it perfectly in the chat. She said, so a person may read a book on soul retrieval and may not need to apply what they learned until X amount of time later on in their journey. So yeah, it's a preparation. Yeah, exactly.
And we talked already about how soul retrieval is kind of a really in-depth thing that people possibly shouldn't do by themselves, because it is one of those really, really difficult and often touching trauma types of work. So sometimes just the reading for it can be, for some people who have, that's the beginning of opening a floodgate.
And also, too, even going into, and this goes for shadow work and soul retrieval. We've talked about having someone else to be your mirror. with soul retrieval, because there is sometimes that disassociation thing, sometimes you have to have the other person there to kind of state the stuff because you've entirely blocked it out and don't see it. And that's part of finding it, if you will. Yeah. So I think that's also another reason that it's usually recommended with someone. Obviously, other than the psychological dangers there. Let's see. So this was a conversation between two people, and I wanted to highlight it because I thought it was interesting and something that we could go with. So Melanie and Sweet Susie were talking, and Melanie says, would you say we are retrieving parts of our soul when we work with our ancestors? Since biologically and spiritually we share blood and roots, would you believe our souls would be parts of a whole? Sweet Susie responded with, do you think that might be cell memory coming into play from our ancestors? Because I think it is. Melanie says, yes, but are our cells and the memories contained within separate from our souls? And Sweet Susie says, you would think they would be, but I could be wrong. Right? So I'm like, no, we need to, this whole conversation needs to be highlighted.
Yeah. Cool stuff. Cool stuff, chat. Right? That's awesome. It's your turn to go first.
Okay. So I'm going to start at the very beginning part of this because there's like layers.
It's like an onion.
Yeah. Would you say we are retrieving parts of our souls when we work with our ancestors? Since we biologically and spiritually share blood and roots, would you believe our souls would be parts of a whole? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. You look, if anyone has taken my ancestral course, they'll know how I am on that whole thing. Yes. Sweet Susie says, do you think that might be cell memory coming into play? So I think with this, forgive me if this sounds a little harsh, but I think we're arguing semantics over the same shit. A little bit for me. I think like, because ancestry runs into like all of it and our souls all run together. And so like you and I remember when we talked about the Demeter and Persephone thing? I don't know if anybody here does, but basically we were saying when Persephone went into the underworld, a piece of Demeter went with her. So I definitely think that there is a connection and overlapping between our souls. Also energetically, the roots, it just all overlays. Like right now I'm like, can I pick a point to explain this from?
I love the idea that soul permeates cells. I'm loving that as a physical kind of mapping. That kind of is fascinating to me. Like the idea that every cell and our soul just permeates through the same way that we consider deity to permeate through everything. That our soul permeates through every cell, every membrane, every part of our body.
Well, a lot of people say the mitochondrial DNA. It's it's the powerhouse of the cells. You can trace that back to like 6 key hominid women. And so if it is literally, think about that, the powerhouse of the cell, it provides that energy. So if that energy feeds into that from 6 key women, and we're all essentially descended from that, right now, like how much cell memory of each other do we have there? Like that is
crazy. The interconnectedness through tapestry of DNA.
What do you got? You got anything to add to that, Joey?
Not really.
That entire conversation was
yeah. I was just like, I love it. I love it as an analogy. I love it as a way of. It's kind of, it really borders on like that physical science, but then bringing in the spiritual to it as well. I kind of, I love all that, cheers.
Yes, 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 yes. That's my shoulder dance, guys, of happiness. Yes, 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 yes. Ah, okay, so what's going on now? I'm sorry, I'm going back to the chat now because I was in a world.
Yeah.
Let's see. Any other questions, guys? Anything else going on?
Question?
I'm looking through.
I mean, we haven't really talked about how you would go about soul retrieval.
As always, when we talk about blood and ancestors, I can only... Okay, so Random says, as always, when we talk about blood and ancestors, I can only look at it as, why does this have any bearing on us? We are technically all related as a species. I just don't see it. But then again, that could just be a shadow since I'm adopted.
It's okay.
Yep.
Read the comment to me again.
Okay. As always, when we talk about blood and ancestors, I can only look at it as, why does this have any bearing on us? We are technically all related as a species. I just don't see it. But then again, that could just be a shadow since I'm adopted.
I think there's an element within that of taking the negative connotations that get brought into discussions about bloodline, like racism and like superiority complex bullshit and stuff like that. And I understand why people would get irritated by that kind of dialogue, and I understand why people get annoyed by the ancestor dialogue that goes along the lines of, well, our ancestors did this, so should we, because that's nonsense. And to me it really is, because we've evolved, maybe, hopefully, somewhere along the line. But for me, there is no real separation between us and ancestry, so there's no need to feel discounted as an individual just because you belong to a collective. And I've talked about this in a blog post as well, that I put it as succinctly as I could, because again, this is one of these subjects where it's a bit in the flux and it's confusing. But just because you are part of a great ecosystem, and I put it in terms of like a machine, just because you're in part of a great machine and all the different cogs are interconnected and it's all working and it's all this incredible thing, doesn't mean that your position within that machine is any less vital.
Mm-hmm.
Your self-importance, your self-worth, your feelings of self are not taken away from belonging in an ecosystem, in interconnectedness. And one of the main reasons people want to disassociate and disconnect from the idea that we're all interconnected and our ancestors are interconnected and we're all interconnected to all people is kind of like this twofold thing that happens, where people feel like if they're in this big tapestry, then their self-worth is nothing. And then there are people who want to control, and it's much more of a negative side of things. Like, I don't want to be connected to all these people because then I'm not superior to all these people anymore. I'm on the same line. So there's a kind of an internal thing that goes on with people worrying about who they are as an individual. And then there's the people that are looking outside of themselves and wanting to be better, higher up, whatever, than other people. And really, for self-worth issues and shadows, which this definitely interplays with, and I'm going to get Cris to reiterate her adopted ancestor thing, because that's really the gorgeous way of looking at it. I think it is. I think it's shadow. I don't think you need to dismiss the interconnectedness of all things, because there was a part there it's like, does it matter? And I'm like, well, all people matter.
All right, hold up. I want to address something she's saying in the comments. So she says, I know someone who is literally a descendant of the Ku Klux Klan and the Confederate leader. Their ancestors don't make that person who they are. He is who he is, and his blood doesn't change who he is. He is not racist or any of that, and he's very liberal. So tell me then, what does he get from his ancestry? Nothing. Me, I say lessons.
Yeah, I was going to say.
He gets lessons.
Yeah.
To assume that he is who he is and his blood doesn't change that to assume that the ancestor doesn't make that person who they are in any way isn't entirely fair. I'm not saying fair to a Ku Klux Klan member. What I am saying is It's not fair because, one, he wouldn't be living probably. That's a pretty big deal. Can't do anything if you're not living. Second of all, there's lessons there to take from. There's an energy to undo things. Okay? So I think that just because he's not exactly like that person doesn't mean that he doesn't get anything from that. We always think that our ancestors have to be saints when we think back on it. But that's not always the truth. And oftentimes we end up learning to not be them and honor the whole by doing that. So that's the thing I would say for that.
I would take that even further. I would take that into reincarnation. That's saying the whole idea behind reincarnation, at least for me, that makes the most sense, is that we're supposed to experience all facets of life, and how humans perceive those to be good or bad is a value judgment based on human beings. But if the soul is meant to experience all shades of humanity, including what we consider to be the negative or uglier sides of humanity, then surely the soul must experience all of these things in order to elevate past them.
And that doesn't excuse the things.
No, not at all. It doesn't make it any less horrifying. It doesn't make it any less any more acceptable just because your ancestor was a slaver, or you were a slaver in a past experience, and then maybe you've reincarnated as being descended from slaves. That to me sounds like the balancing of understanding humanity and what is better for the soul, to understand that, these things have consequences, that people were hurt, that this is against humanity in general, and then you elevate past the lessons of previous incarnations.
Yeah.
Not necessarily in a linear form.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So Michael Scott just said, and they're not necessarily lessons for the descendant. Rather, it may have been lessons for the ancestor. One may choose to incorporate the evolution rather than relive the past. So both of you are touching on the fact that it's not necessarily linear. One of the things that I said in my priestessing when I joined with the matriarchs in my family to speak for them was, as I heal one, I heal all. Which means as I heal myself, as I heal, and help someone else to heal them or whatever, I heal all, because it's all a big circle. It's all happening now. I don't think that time is that it's definitely, I think, incorporated in many more ways than that.
Yeah. And if the all is humanity.
But Random, you know where to find me, girl. You know where to find me.
Or either of us. We can both talk about it.
Yeah. Exactly.
And if the all is humanity, then as we heal ourselves from those lessons of our ancestors, which we now perceive to be against humanity, then we're elevating humanity in general, hopefully, towards a better place. And that's very true to me right now, because that's all in conflict right now. The world is in so much conflict with all this sort of suppression of human rights, and the backlash against the suppression of human rights and the fighting back against it. It feels to me like 2017 has been a year of testing how far humanity has come to the point where they push back against the rights of themselves and others less fortunate than themselves being taken away from them. And we are passing and failing depending on what your perspective is. Probably both at the same time.
Yeah. So Shay brought up something, and I see a couple of people bringing up different stuff that I want to mention about the ancestor thing. So a hard lesson I've had to learn is not to judge all of my ancestors by the action of the worst ones. Worst being like this, I'm going to say. And there was some other commentary about that. I can't find it right now, but basically, when people think of ancestors, this is a soapbox that I get on. They think of the closest few that they have the clearest memories of, which is natural. I get that's the thing you have probably the most memories of, but that does not represent all of them. There are thousands of lives in front of you, quote unquote, in front of you, okay, that are entangled with this, to judge all of them by a few of them isn't really fair to the others, is it? Or yourself. Because essentially in judging them, there's a piece of it that you judge yourself by.
Also, we're judging by today's standards. We have to remember, as a student of history, there was a point in time where, say, Europeans were not as aware of people outside, or people in the Americas, and people in Africa and things. And so today we have a much smaller scale because of the internet, because we're more educated. We know about the cultures of other people. It's easier to find out about the cultures of other people. And I'm not excusing the behavior of history. I'm not. I'm saying that it's easy for us in this day and age to put a value judgment back in history without considering where they were at in history. Is slavery ever right? No. Is our perception of slavery different now because we have a better understanding of human beings in other parts of the world? It is better. Unfortunately, racism still exists. The justification for this shit still exists. But we have evolved since that point in history. So it's easy for us to look back and judge things to do with our ancestors without really considering the time in which they lived.
Yes, Michael. I'm sorry. Hold up. Yes, Joey. But also, yes, Michael. Michael Scott says, ancestors are also multifold. Blood and bone, spirit and craft, clan and kin. It does not have to always be like this, this is my mother.
The bloodline. Yeah.
It does not have to be that. Your ancestors, it's a whole, look, y'all, if you don't have
technically we're all
interested in this kind of thing, like go look at my course. Because it's so, we could even argue that that tree outside my window is my ancestor. And also you take past lives and things into account, that can also, be, maybe in this life they're not blood, but what if they were in another? Does that now make that cheaper on this side? No, you still have that connection. You still are like, I know this person.
Plus, if we're all interconnected in the way that I perceive us to be anyway through the great ecosystem, we're all ancestors of each other. If we're all interconnected to all people and all points in time and all spirit and all energy, we're all in this great web of weird, or however you perceive it to be, we're all interconnected to each other's ancestors. Both on a genetic marker level that Cris talked about earlier, when there's only, you can go back to the 6 women. And then on a spiritual level, where we're all interconnected and there is no separation.
I'm going to have to be like, soul retrieval and ancestors. No, that's all right. She says, sorry for taking the chat off track.
Oh, it's cool.
No, I mean, I get hyped up about this conversation. I don't know if you could tell, guys, but
we're good about all this sort of shiz. We love it.
Yeah, this is like my favorite stuff. I'm interested in your opinion on this, Joey. So Random says, in response to Sweet Susie, I know that blood and love are not the same thing. Love is family. Family is love. Blood is just the stuff in our veins, just my opinion. I'm interested in your response on that, because I know you work with a lot of gods that you give blood to and things like that. So,
well, in terms of a perspective of the goddess Morrigan, life blood is the land. There is no disassociation between the energies and ley lines and the life force within the earth upon which we live than there is in the blood in your veins. There's an interconnectedness within Celtic mythology. So when Cris talks about the idea that you can be related to that tree out there, that tree is technically an ancestor and we're connected to the world around us, that's kind of the feeling that you get through the Celtic mythology, that life blood and the blood through our veins is, there is no separation. And blood is life. Blood carries the oxygen around the body. It regulates the body in a lot of ways. Without blood, we'd be dead. And I think there's something very, very powerful about life force and blood, and I have a whole video about blood and the Morrigan if you're interested in that particular perspective. Now, for me, blood makes up kind of like, it's almost akin to the energy moving through the body. It's almost like the physical manifestation of the energy and the interconnectedness through the ecosystem. It's a lot like when neurons are firing and that's an energy. For me, blood is very much like a physical incarnation of that energy system. It's kind of like nutrients moving through the roots in the ecosystem and the world around us. I don't believe in using blood as a defense mechanism for racism or anything. And I don't agree with the analogy that you must always forgive your family because they're blood. And the idea of family only being the people who you are directly related to in this incarnation isn't something I agree with either. Because obviously, I have nothing to do with most of my blood family. And other than my middle sister, who she's my soul sister too. So there's a difference there. We are not, as people, defined by the people that birthed us. We take on attributes, we take on lessons, but ultimately if those people are detrimental to us as an individual, detrimental to us as a soul, or they're absent in some way, that doesn't make us less of a person. The people who have good relationships with their parents and they can grow and thrive and be molded in certain ways by their parents, that's beautiful. And that's a beautiful relationship that you will have experience of in some incarnations along your soul journey. But all of us as moving like souls who experience all of these things like I was talking about, at some point will experience an incarnation where we're abandoned or our parents are not good people, abusive and so on and so forth, because that's again experiencing the whole range of human experiences in order to elevate soul. So I think there is something there that is sort of clinging to the idea of blood moving through the body in terms of defining self, and it's not really, for me, defining who you are in terms of the physical incarnation so much as it is the whole package. Like, do you become less of an individual if you lose a limb? No. If you had a problem with your blood and you had to have, dialysis and the whole blood system changed and you had to have it all cleansed out and put back in, does that change who you are as an individual? No. So for me, sort of putting too much attachment on the physical like that doesn't really mesh with identity. Your soul permeates through the entire body, but it does it that way. It's not like, the body is the shell. So whilst I feel like blood and life force has an interconnectedness and an importance and a sacredness, I don't think individuality and personality is based on the physical, if that helps at all. I kind of covered a few different things.
I thought you brought up a lot of interesting stuff with that, especially like, you get a blood transfusion. Are you less of a person?
No,
because there's a lot of importance placed on blood. And I think that there is, blood is important, but again, I don't think it's as like in the box as people imagine it to be.
Yeah.
Good Lord, we've got a bunch. Okay.
It's because I've been.
What is happening here?
For a bit.
Wait. Okay. So Shay Jenkins, yes. Shay Jenkins says, so when it comes to soul retrieval, can you use quote unquote safe ancestors as an anchor point?
Safe ancestors.
As your only one, I don't suggest it.
I wouldn't ever do soul retrieval without a physical person available.
Yeah. That's why I was like, not just ancestors. Yeah, no. You can certainly have them around and supporting roles. But I definitely think that's something that you should do with someone physically.
Just because it's so traumatic for the most part.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, think about this, okay? Like, let's say, and this isn't like a direct thing, but let's go here. Have you ever been having a panic attack or something, and you're so in your world that, like, speaking to you, texting you, feelings of that is not going to get you back? What's going to get you back is someone maybe, because different people cope with it in different ways. Someone maybe holding you, like a hug,
Or
stroking your hair. Or
yeah.
or breathing with them, so you calm your breathing. There's physical things there that are the anchor in a sense. So yeah, but I definitely think you could have them with you.
You can incorporate it, yeah, but
yeah.
Don't rely on it, I think.
Soul retrieval is just really heavy. If we haven't stressed that, I'm going to stress it again. It's just really heavy.
Soul retrieval is usually caused by trauma, so we're not talking about
trauma. Okay. Let's see. I'm not close to my living family. Oh, that's interesting, Melanie. I vibe with you on that. I'm not close to my living family. My dad died when I was 11, and I feel closer to him now than I ever did while he was alive. So here's the thing. I love my dad, and I loved him when he was alive. Don't get me wrong. But we actually end up, like, talking more with him dead, which is interesting. But he comes up in my dreams and stuff all the time. Yeah. Let's see. Emerla says, to be honest, I only started reading about soul retrieval yesterday, and it reminded me of grief that I've held on to for 15 years. And when I felt around, I was shown the place where the death took place. What do you think that means? Can you lose your soul to a specific area, even if just within the mind rather than the place? Well, are you geared up? Are you?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
I'm thinking and using and chewing on it.
So there's a couple layers to this. Okay, so first of all, thinking of it as like a place is kind of like the box thing, but let's go there.
Okay.
If we're going there, a lot of people will refer to things like energy imprints in things and places, and you can totally leave an energy imprint. If you've ever walked into a house that has a lot of arguing and stuff back and forth, you can walk in that house and feel it instantly. Sometimes you can even hear it.
Yeah.
I have walked into houses where someone had punched the wall and they fixed it all up. But I'm like, nope, there's something. What is this over here? What is that? This is not.
There's been occasions I've walked into houses and I've been like, I can't stay in here.
Right.
And it'll turn out that some violent crime has happened there or something.
And that was done by the living.
Yeah.
Not by the dead, even though they're usually associated for whatever reason with ghosts.
It's usually the living, though, when it's stuff like that, though.
Right.
Stuff they did in life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And now, don't get me wrong, there can also be like loops that spirits go through, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Like on replay in the same area. But just on that part, yeah, I could totally see how energetically it was imprinted in that quote unquote place, if we're going to think in terms of that. What am I hearing? I don't know if you could hear that. There was weird noises. Oh, the birds are fighting. Okay, that's why. Hello, Blue Jay.
Grief can be a trigger as well, of course.
Yes. Sorry, I got distracted by wildlife, guys.
I wonder. Yeah.
But that is a thing where like a 15-year-old grief, and I'm pretty sure I know what you're talking about, Emerald. That is something that to dig that up, I would definitely have someone with you, because that was a really big.
I get a feeling I know what it's about too, just from sensing the energy around it. So yes, have someone there with you.
Yeah. What do I think that means as far as that? Yeah, I think that it's you know, fractured stuff. It's stuff that's in what did Random call it earlier? The self-fragmented or realigning, I think. Yeah. So soul realignment. That's what it was.
Yes.
So yeah, I could see that would totally be a piece of it. Would you want to add anything to that, Joey?
No. I think I have picked up on what's the energy of that situation is, and I feel that have someone with you.
Okay. So what else? I've had to know. Sorry, guys. Searching through the chat. Okay, so Shay says, meaning those I know I can trust, not having any family at all and no one on hand to help. She means safe ancestors. That question was her. And then she says, so if you have no one physically around to help with soul retrieval and you know it needs to be done, what do you do?
Well, there is always professionals that you can seek out for counseling and things with regards to that element of soul retrieval. When I'm doing this work, quite often I speak to my sister. Now, given distance with my sister, I will talk to my sister on Skype or over the phone. And she helps with me with certain elements of it because she has an understanding of everything I've been through, because she had not been through it exactly the same herself because she escaped the abuse, but she was in the environment, at least at the hands of my father. She suffered under the hands of the mother, same as I did. And so she has an understanding. So for me, I have people who are physically present, but I also have someone who deeply understands who I am, who's available in that capacity. But I would always, if you're starting, because that's obviously, it's been a process with me, and I had people around in the beginning physically present, and I'm at the point now where my sister and I can talk about these things through Skype or on the phone, and it's okay. But when you're beginning, I would probably seek out some kind of counseling if you're completely by yourself with it. And that in itself, just because it's much more of perhaps like an inverted commas mundane act, doesn't make it less spiritual, because some people are like, oh, well, counseling isn't part of the spiritual thing. There is no separation between that and the spiritual journey. They're all one. So that's what I would suggest.
Yeah. Yeah, no, my answer was going to be, then I would look into seeking out a psychiatrist that works for you. And if not that, then, you know, reach out a little more to those you do have around that you know are healthy anchors for you. I will specify. And the thing is also there's a level of this where it's like, look, if none of them are around, it might not be time to do it yet.
There is also that, yeah. Maybe look at and examine the reasons you want to begin. And then think, am I putting myself in a position because I think I should, because of the time of year, because it's on everybody's lips right now, or is it because I am truly ready in myself? And it's okay not to be, which we have mentioned, but I'll restate with,
yes, please,
flashing neon signs. It's okay not to be ready to start these things. Yeah.
Yes. Spirit fingers. Anyway.
Spirit fingers. All the ancestors behind us for generations and generations.
Like, spirit fingers. Yeah. These. I see these like, anyway. Sweet Susie says, what about the instances where it was so traumatic you lost part of your memory? I know I've discussed with a therapist, this is our brain's way of protecting us, but how could we do soul retrieval? So we actually talked about this earlier, which was the fact that sometimes that is the very reason that you need someone else with you, is because you have to have someone else to kind of like trigger that for you so that you start to remember.
And memory is a funky thing anyway, because
Mm-hmm.
you can get false memory, you can get planted memory, which are two very, very real, very traumatic things, which are very real points as why you want a trained professional with you, helping you when you don't remember elements of things. Because in that instance, they are trained to work with those things, whereas even the most well-meaning person in your life is not. And if, you know, someone well-meaning in your life could bring up a memory which isn't entirely accurate, there have been people who've, you know, they've had memories of things that have they witnessed but didn't happen to them, and then they bring up the trauma as if it happened to them and it didn't. And there have been court cases that have been thrown out and people have gotten away with abusive behavior because of shit like this. So it is a very real thing. It's a very traumatic thing for the person on many levels, because one, they then get the memory, but then they feel like they're a liar and they made it up, and there's this whole trauma that comes from false memory. So absolutely, with memory loss and memory like blockages, professional help.
Yeah. Yeah, Melanie says, be very careful retrieving memories. Do it with someone you trust. Yeah, people can plant memories into your mind during hypnotherapy. Professionals have done this before. So, yeah, be careful. Trust your gut on that too. I'll say, even if you might not have any foreground, or foreground, is that the word I want to use? No. Even if you might not have any outright reasons. Okay, like by society standards. If your gut is like, I don't know about this person, then that's probably not the right person. Don't try to force it. Okay, so, oh yeah, and Michael says you can actually talk yourself into quote unquote real memories, which is also a thing. Like you can try to remember so hard that you convince yourself that what you think you remember is real, which I do this a lot on my own anyway sometimes, because like my husband has to correct me and it's like, no, I swear I told you that, but I didn't. I said it in my head. I didn't actually say it out loud to him.
That's someone else. Someone else does that.
I do it all the time. And then he's like, you did not tell me. I'm like, I swear I told you. No, you really didn't. Okay.
I feel
I was just really like, into what, I was just really into what I was thinking then.
Yeah. But I do it as well, where I'm like, I told you this, right? Because I had this whole conversation in my head that I was going to tell you, and I knew how you'd react, so I needed to know what to tell you when you reacted. And then you're like, no, you just did that in your head, Virgo. And yeah, so I understand that side of things as well.
Yeah. All right, so Wolf Raven Hampton says, do you think this could be needed from trauma caused by, she's talking about soul retrieval. Do you think this could be needed from trauma caused by religious brainwashing done to children that are now adults? I think a child being told they are sinning over and over can cause a break of soul.
Sure.
I have a friend as a kid who had that. Wow. And yeah, absolutely. She would see demons coming for her and all kinds of stuff at all times. She didn't trust anyone. Oh, my bad. We can only see you because I clicked on you. My bad. No, so I had a friend who was raised just really, really, really strict. And she went for like basically regular, I guess you could call them exorcisms, really. Because they told her anytime she was out of line that she was possessed.
Oh, God. Who does
so
that?
So there was a lot of trauma there, and a lot of like inner turmoil in terms of who she is, and is this really me, or is this the devil making me do it? And
God.
She has had to sort through a lot of that. And it's a long road. It still is. So absolutely, I think that is something.
Abuse is abuse.
Yeah.
Dehumanize. Okay, the key thing about any kind of abuse is the process of dehumanizing the victim. And it doesn't matter what kind of abuse we're talking. It can be any kind. But a key thing that abusers do is dehumanize their victim, because it makes it easier for them, and it means that the individual is in their control more. This, in the case of children, is really effective because children don't have a firm sense of identity most of the time at that, at younger ages. It takes us a much longer period to become really firm in who we are as individuals. And when people are telling us we're evil or whatever it is as part of the abuse cycle, then it can absolutely create those boundaries between parts of our soul, like parts of who we are, because we don't know who we are, so we lock parts of ourselves away. We put those walls up between things that, those parts of ourselves that we've locked away because of that trauma and the things that trigger it. Yeah, absolutely. That's awful, by the way.
Yeah. Sometimes she would call me at like 2 a.m. And she lived right down the street. So I would, depending on what time it was, I would either go walking or I would get my mom up and we would go down and pick her up because her family was also very abusive, physically, sexually, emotionally, in general. Yeah. So. Shakti, we are almost done. We got like 14 minutes left. So, yeah.
Why are you sick of us? What's
But she was like, it's really late here, but are you almost done? Like, I assume, because I haven't seen her in chat, so I assume she like just found us and was like, is this still a thing?
Yeah, we'll be going until the hour, so.
Yeah, Random says gaslighting is really hard to recoup from.
Oh, you're telling me.
You basically have to go on a very rough, long journey of finding yourself again, finding who you really are, and learning to trust yourself. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. The self-blame that comes from gaslighting is a bitch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So, any other questions, guys? We got, 13 minutes left now? Oh.
The magic number.
Yes. Also, I did a purple. For those who haven't noticed. I did a purple.
You did a purple. I told you I was in her head. It's not that she dyed it. It's just that I've been in her head so long, she's now turning purple.
She's made it purple. Yeah. Figure out.
Cheap alternative to head eye.
Yeah, so now there's encouragement being given for people who are going through healing from gaslighting situations and stuff. And yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's possible.
But again, that's the point that I will cover right here is I'm going to say what I said earlier again in light of gaslighting. So gaslighting kind of tries to make you doubt who you are as an individual. And I think that's the danger of when we talk about soul retrieval and things of that nature, that some people out there are going to use things like soul retrieval, etc., to make you feel like you're not whole as a person, that you're dependent on something they're offering. That occurs. And within spiritual practitioners doing it, that occurs, as well as, professionals who we've already mentioned. Yeah. So just remember when you're looking into soul retrieval that you do not have to pay an arm and a leg for, because this person has told you that only they can help you with soul retrieval and only they have the answers to it. And you are broken irretrievably, blah, 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 blah. I don't agree with that at all. And I don't agree with any spiritual practitioner who tells you that they are offering the treatment to whatever it is. Spiritual practitioners who offer real services are the ones that help you to help yourself. Who are like, you have the power, you have the ability, you can do this, and I will assist in the way that I have been trained to do, or the way that I have learned to do, and the way that I can offer you, whatever it is, whether it's physical products like I do, although I'm branching out, or whether it's like with Cris doing her mentoring. I've seen lots of different people who really truly help people through things. Kellyanne with her tarot, for example, Molly from Her Speak, she has these incredible musical and artistic accompaniments to help you out in meditations and things. And these are services offered by people who want to help you to help yourself. So just be aware with things like soul retrieval, A, you're not irretrievably broken. B, you can do this with assistance. And again, you may need a professional if things are caused by trauma and it's deep-rooted trauma, which they usually are, because it's much more turbulent than most shadow work. Shadow work has kind of like a scale from kind of like, oh, this is a little bit on the uncomfortable side, right down to the getting towards the trauma levels, and shadow work has that scale. So do not allow people to tell you that you cannot do it, and that without whatever they're selling.
Yeah, I agree. Let's see. Can you note some links or sources for soul retrieval and learning about it, or how to start it? People are asking. So, for me, with soul retrieval, that's something that it gets really sketchy for me in terms of like the stuff that you can find out there.
Yeah, I was gonna say I wouldn't either.
Yes,
you can watch this video.
Someone I will recommend that I know is a shaman that I trust is Dr. Drake Spaeth.
Okay.
He is both a very experienced psychologist and also a shamanic practitioner.
Okay.
And he's actually he is my death midwife mentor, the woman who taught me, that's her husband. So
Okay.
And he is legit, knows his stuff.
Okay.
Fascinating mind. So you could look him up. He doesn't post a lot about it, but he does make himself very accessible. So
yeah, let's go with that then, because I don't want to direct people to stuff that isn't, and there is so much on soul retrieval that feels a bit off to me.
Yeah, I agree. So there's that. Yeah, pretty much. And also, I think that there's a reason. So here's the thing, too. Because it is so deep and involved and heavy and potentially even more damaging, if not done correctly, I think that's also another reason that you can't find all of it very easily. It's one of those things that tends to be taught within traditions, like once you get to a certain point. So if you're looking up soul retrieval to do soul retrieval yourself, you're not going to hear me do black and white statements very often, but I say don't. If you're looking it up to learn about it, okay. If you're looking it up to do it yourself, don't. Yeah. Shakti, we have been talking about the relationship between shadow work and soul retrieval. She just came in, so she was like, I don't know if this was already discussed, but yeah, no, we already talked about like the difference between it and how like people usually do shadow work first a lot of times.
Yeah.
And then go into the other. Yeah. Okay, so she says, during times of great illness, distress, trauma, abuse, and the like, in order to cope with what we have faced and allow us to endure, a part of our soul energy retreats into our subconscious. Yeah, yep. During this time, aspects from the shadow self emerge to replace what we've been lost. Yeah. Melanie says, I've been doing a lot of soul mending on my own. My partner has held space for me, but I feel that this is something that I must do. I don't reach out for support very often. Perhaps I should try. Well, is he experienced? Does he know his way around this? I don't really know much about him, so I can't really, What's over there, Joey? What's going on?
I was just thinking about the personal nature of soul retrieval as well, but there's no one defining branch, defining pathway of doing soul retrieval to my mind, just because of how highly individualized and highly personal each instance is going to be, because the trauma that caused it is going to be different, the interaction with the emotional response to that is going to be different, the way that the individual discovers they feel that they've got these boundaries in place that needs soul alignment, like we're calling it, is going to be different, the way that we interact with the counsel and advice and psychiatrists and things, it's all going to be so vastly different that I was thinking about that in terms of, like, you know, where do we find advice for these things? It's very difficult to find advice in general, in generalized terms, just because of the highly individualized perspective attached to soul.
Yeah.
As much as we're all interconnected.
Yeah. Michael Scott says, any thoughts about, I'm going to use it like he did, calling back parts of you which are already ready to return, sort of a soul retrieval light. I like that he said. I like that he said retrieval light, like that. That made me happy.
Like a light beer. Like a light retrieval.
Calling back parts of you which are already ready to return. Okay, so my thoughts on that are is like, yeah, you could do that like officially, but also I feel like we also integrate them automatically sometimes, personally.
Yeah.
So I guess it would depend on a lot of things, honestly. Like, because I go to name one and then I'm like, well, there's also this one and that one too. Because it could depend on the timing, the alignment. Oh, what? I said it that way because you can call things you aren't ready for. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I feel like personally we do that a lot anyway. Anyone who works with like the cycles of the moon, for instance, that's something that kind of comes into play there, even as we release things and call things to us and etc. Oftentimes when we're working on our self and healing with the self, we'll do that. You know, actually, what was it? This last one. I basically went and met a fear, you could say, a trauma also. And I kind of transmuted it and then re-assimilated it. And that is a form of taking it back into you when it is ready and when you are ready.
I wonder how much of that as like soul retrieval light is actually just shadow work by a different name. Because if we are realigning ourselves, like we're bringing back parts of ourselves and forgiving ourselves, and you know, like this part of ourselves that we're afraid of or we didn't like or whatever, and then we take that back on a slightly easier level, is that maybe falling into the realm of shadow work rather than full-on soul retrieval? If we have, I mean, that's very defined, and I don't think about these things in terms of definition, but I'm just wondering.
Yeah, welcome to our channels.
Yeah. And I'm just wondering, because like on the surface of it, my first thought was this feels like, you know, when it's kind of has that new agey vibe and it's not fully taking things seriously, and you get these like this information that's out there that we kind of talked about, like some of it is like, oh, you can just call parts back to yourself and it's so simple and so easy and they'll just come back and poof, you're fine. And there's that element to it of not taking it really seriously and not realizing what it truly is. Like we can just leave bits of ourselves all over without noticing. And it's like, it doesn't just, you know, bits of soul just don't fall out like freaking earrings. Like we drop them somewhere and left it like, oh no, left a bit of my soul on that beach somewhere. And it's much more involved than that, and there is a definite process and painful process that happens for us to put up walls between parts of ourselves. And I wonder if like the soul retrieval light is not fully understanding, and when we come across that idea of like just gently calling back bits of ourselves, and I wonder if that's really the work behind soul retrieval, or kind of like a surface level attempt to understand what it is.
Which can also in some cases be very like placating.
Yeah. Oh, I did the work, it's done. Woo.
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about it. It's kind of giving me itchies. It's kind of like,
Yeah, Michael Scott says, "Poof, you're fine, haha. It's still a trauma to deal with. It'll come to your conscience one way or another, or consciousness. Sorry, one way or another."
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of feel like you don't always have to like. This is a soapbox again. So we like to make like this official statement thing as humans. Like we like to do, and this is the grand poobah of things that are happening, or like I will make this special ritual, or I will make this special meal, or I will assign this day to do all of these things. And sometimes like we get so lost in making it a special thing for ourselves that like we don't just do the damn thing. That's not always the case. I'm not saying don't celebrate or don't like put effort or thought into things, but I am saying like that can very easily turn into essentially avoidance of the thing.
Don't get so involved with the superficiality side of things that you lose the depth. Yeah.
Yeah. So, end rant.
Heareth endeth the rant.
Yes. Yeseth?
Yes.
All right. Yeah, and there are definitely like meditations and things like that out there. There's also a lot of books. Usually if you get into any of the shamanic stuff, when you're looking up, shamanism, you can find a lot of things around this. But again, like I said, we're not really going to recommend any specific because anyone can write a book.
Mm-hmm. Hell, if 50 Shades can get published.
And out come the claws. Anyway.
Come on now. That's awful, awful work.
Anyway, though, guys, it is 3 minutes past 12 here, so we are 3 minutes over. Le gasp. But I do want to thank you guys for being really active in chat today and asking a lot of really good questions and having some deep conversations.
Mm-hmm.
That was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Melanie says 50 Shades of Shadow Work. Totally different book.
Now I need to write it. He gently caressed her shadow.
Yes. All right. So, guys, we will see you. Is
Friday.
It still tomorrow? Friday?
Friday.
Okay. So we will see you Friday. Same time. Different bat channel. It'll be hers. At Joey's channel at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
British. I think we're still just about in British Summer Time. I think we've not changed yet. So, yeah.
So, well, we're at EDT now, but whatever. You get what I mean, guys. Eastern, whatever.
Yeah.
But hopefully we'll see your faces there. And then later that night, we have the campfire thing on my channel. So,
you can spend the entire day with us, basically.
We're going to be on all day. All right. I love your faces. I will see you guys later. Is there anything you want to say? Any parting words?
Come hang out with us on Friday, and we're going to be talking about Dark Goddess stuff all day long. We'll be talking about Dark Goddess Agroboda, and I will be saying Jurmengander every opportunity I get. Jurmengander. And we'll just be talking about misconceptions about dark goddesses, so that'd be fun.
You know the word that I like to say?
Well,
Einenjar. 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 It's fun. I don't. Anyway.
No, I still love Jormungandr. I like the way it feels. It feels like Jormungandr.
All right, we're gonna go and say these words to ourselves when we're not live.
I don't mind everyone hearing me. Jormungandr.
Well, it's not that we mind. It's that the end of this is going to be entirely us going Jormungandr.
Well, that's isn't that how we normally end stuff? I don't know.
That's true. We did just sign off like bye one day and then just end
singing and yeah.
All right. So I will see you guys in 2 days.
Love you, oodles. Have fun.